An alleged racist incident has reignited calls for racism in our country to be further criminalized. Last Sunday, black customers claimed they were called baboons by a white couple in Fourways.
The thing is, if you go out looking for racism, you're going to find it. If you're going out looking to be a confident, pleasant South African, being nice to other people, you'll be amazed how nice they are to you. That's my experience. So, the nicest thing about South Africa is you can be warm to people and they are warm back to you. So why don't you try it in Cape Town and see?
Yeah.
And if people aren't like that, you come and phone me.
The aftermath of this interaction was caught on camera. It actually went viral. When I say viral, I mean millions of views on social media. Ayanda Ravele and her mother have opened a case against this white couple at the Douglasdale police station. I am going to take you to that video that's gone viral in a moment, and I will speak to Ayanda, who joins us in Limpopo. But I do want to emphasize we are in the process, our producers, to track down the white couple who are accused of the racism. But before we speak to Ayanda, who's laid the charge, let's just take you to that video.
Bloody shame on you. Bloody shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. As old as you are. You should have thought about it first. Think before you act. Think before you act. Who's a baboon? Who's a baboon? Who's yes you are?
Why did you call me a baboon? And you let him call me baboon and you say that I'm the one. He called me a baboon. I have no proof. There were 6 people outside that heard him call me a baboon. And now you're telling me that I'm behaving nasty. You guys are racist. You're racist. Yes, I'm racist. I'm racist. Sure, let me go ahead and let the world know that these are the racist people that call me baboon.
I'm tempted to say something here. First of all, the incident that happened in that parking all the way into the food shop or supermarket is heartbreaking. No matter how you look at it, the term baboon, if it was indeed used, is not just offensive. It's loaded with historical and racial trauma. It's never just a word. It carries the weight of dehumanization and centuries of injustice. If the white lady did say it, then it's an undeniable act of racism, and she should be held accountable. Now, here's the tricky part. If you go out looking for racism, you'll find it. But let's unpack that. In South Africa, where our racial wounds are still fresh, there's a hyper-awareness of race in everyday interactions. That's not to say people are imagining racism. Far from it. But sometimes, we view every conflict through a racial lens because of our painful history. A parking lot fight that could have been about a bad parking job suddenly becomes about race. This doesn't mean racism isn't real. It absolutely is. But not every disagreement is racially motivated. However, this also highlights a deeper issue. Why do we, as a society, escalate so quickly? Whether it's the frustration of daily life, unresolved racial tensions, or just a bad day, small incidents often blow up into viral sensations. What happened before the video started rolling? What was the full context of their interaction? We don't always get the full story, but social media turns it into a trial by public opinion. At the end of the day, this situation shows how fragile our racial dynamics are. It's a reminder that words have power, that unresolved racial issues are still bubbling under the surface, and that we need to approach these situations with both accountability and fairness. To the black lady, if, and I say if, she was truly called a baboon, as depicted in the video, she has every right to feel hurt and demand justice. To the white lady, if this is a misunderstanding or if there's more to the story, she deserves the chance to explain herself. But to all of us watching and commenting, this should be a moment for reflection. How do we address racism without turning every disagreement into a racial war? How do we build a society where respect is the norm, not the exception? Let me know what you think, guys. Is this a case of blatant racism or a misunderstanding blown out of proportion? Drop your thoughts below.
Because you know what I wanted to do? We were speaking to Panyaza and we said we want to do, because like...
Anyaza, there's a guy for you. There's a guy for you.
So we said what we want to do, right? Because we got a big platform, right? What we wanted to do is that we want to start a racism hotline, like a WhatsApp number. So if you ever experience racism, you send it to the WhatsApp number and then we'll speak about it on the show. Obviously, after fact checking to make sure it's legit and whatever.
You better make sure it's legit.
You know what I mean?
Because people can turn anything into a racist.
100%. But do you think that's a good idea, though? Because I feel like white people that are racist in South Africa, they do it because there's no accountability. Nothing ever happens. There's no consequence to being racist. It's just like...
But you see,
They do it with impunity.
It's really important to determine that it was racist, right? So,
here is my take, nutshellers. Mac G's idea of a racism hotline where people can WhatsApp their experiences and have them broadcast on his podcast is bold. But let's unpack it. While the intention is commendable, giving a voice to those who experience racism, it's not without its challenges. Let's look into why this might not be the most effective solution to combating racism and what could be done instead. First, racism is a systemic issue. It's deeply embedded in institutions, policies, and cultures. A hotline, while a platform for sharing stories, addresses racism at a surface level. It's like trying to fix a leaking roof by catching the water in a bucket. Helpful in the short term. But it doesn't address the root cause of racism in the country. What we need is structural change, better education on racial biases, enforcement of anti-discrimination laws, and accountability for perpetrators. Second, the idea of broadcasting these experiences raises concerns about privacy and emotional well-being. Sharing such stories publicly can re-traumatize victims and expose them to further scrutiny or backlash. What happens if someone WhatsApps their experience and their employer or neighbor hears it on the podcast? Does MacG have a plan to protect these individuals? Third, let's talk about impact. Let's be honest. Broadcasting stories might raise awareness, but awareness alone isn't enough to create change. It risks becoming a form of trauma entertainment, where people consume stories of racism without any actionable steps. What's the call to action here? How do we ensure these stories lead to concrete change and not just trending hashtags? Now, here's an alternative idea. Instead of a hotline, why not use the platform to amplify organizations and initiatives that are already fighting racism? MacG could partner with legal aid groups, anti-racism educators, or advocacy organizations to not only share stories, but also provide resources and solutions. Imagine a segment where a story is followed by actionable steps. How to report racism, how to support victims, or how to educate oneself on racial justice. And finally, let's not forget the importance of humor. Because, it's MacG, Soul, and the Ghost Lady after all. They could use their satire, puns, humor, and to highlight the absurdity of racist behavior, making it both educational and entertaining. Think Trevor Noah vibes, but with that podcast team flair.
Intention matters with racism, does it not?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, if I do something that has an impact that I never intended, let me just take this example.
Yeah.
Remember this huge scandal of the Duchess of something in Britain?
Mm.
And she was speaking to a woman who was black at an event. And she's old. She's older even than me. Can you believe it?
Mm.
And she's old. And she was chatting to this woman and she said,
by the way, you look good for your age, eh?
Well, that is because I have a wonderful woman called Janine who makes sure that I have some proper makeup on.
Yeah, you must send me your numbers.
Yeah. She'll do you too. You'll see how cool you look.
Because I'm getting a pooza face.
You be careful. I can see one's on this table here. I'm not surprised you've got a pooza face. I'm not at all surprised you've got a pooza face. I'm getting nervous here. What's this for when I leave?
So these are sponsors.
So
that's
you can recover.
Goes.
Oh, that's why this is all here. I thought you were going to make me drink it.
Yes. As you're saying, yes.
So you must just be very, very careful. Where'd you come from? So the woman said, Kensington or wherever she came from. And then she said, no, man, where'd you come from? As if to say, you must be from somewhere else other than Britain. Right. And that became a huge scandal as racist. And this poor woman was mortified who'd asked the question. She said, I didn't mean that. I really didn't mean it. Her crime was that she's old and she didn't understand that that was a hugely insulting thing to say to somebody, right? So intention matters. Now, it's useful to say to somebody that is taken as an insult because people would feel that they then didn't belong here. But there's no intention on the part of the person. So you kindly say to somebody, instead of kicking up a huge, big racism fuss, I took offense at that because A, B, C, and D. But if there's no intention to insult you, there's no need to make them want to crawl into the dust, right? People often say, where did your forebears come from? To me, I never take offense at that. I'm a South African. I was born here.
Yeah.
And let's not forget a critical point. Racism in South Africa is not limited to white people. Yes, the country's history of apartheid often centers white on black racism. But the truth is, prejudice exists across all racial groups. Black South Africans, too, can discriminate against colored or Indian communities, and vice versa. This isn't a white person problem. It's a human problem. A hotline that focuses solely on one racial group perpetuates the myth that only certain groups are capable of being racist. This kind of narrative limits the discussion and ignores the complexity of racism in South Africa.
You know, so you can choose if you want to be offended.
Yeah.
You can choose if you want to be offended. And if somebody says something really racist to you, you can say, you know, that's uncalled for, or that's how I interpreted that. But, you know, the great thing about the way I was brought up, because, you know, my father's family was nearly obliterated in the Holocaust. He says, you're never a victim. You're never a victim. And you can choose how you respond to things. And it's so true.